Thank you. Well, hello, Charleston. And we really are grateful that you came to the last panel of the day and that we realize we're the only thing standing between you and the aquarium reception. So thank you for being here. My name is Wendy Hanamura, and I'm the Director of Partnerships at the Internet Archive, and I will be moderating this panel, which is Working with Libraries to Turn Wikipedia References Blue. And by blue, we don't mean blue state. We mean hypertext blue, so that when you click on the reference, it will take you directly to the book it is citing. How many of you attended the keynote speech by Brewster this morning? Oh, a very high percentage. That's wonderful. Today's session is to build on that, to take what we talked about this morning and to hear from you. To dive deeper, what does this mean for libraries? What does this mean for collections and collection management? And this is really a chance for us to hear from you what you would like to see from this new alliance. So we're going to make you do some work. And we want you to come up and tell us and ask us questions, but also share what would make this alliance between Better World Books, Wikipedia, and also Internet Archive really powerful and useful to you. Let me introduce our panelists. First is Brewster Kahle. He is the founder and digital librarian of the Internet Archive. Now, Brewster kind of made his name because way back when the World Wide Web was started, he was the first guy who said, you know, that World Wide Web might amount to something. I'm going to build crawlers that are going to go back and forth and capture all of the web pages. And today we have 380 billion with a B, web pages in the Wayback Machine. But less well known is that the Internet Archive has also digitized 3.8 million books with over 400 library partners. So let's hear it for books and libraries. Sitting at the far end is Dustin Holland. He is the CEO of Better World Books. Now, Dustin told me this was his 15th or 16th time coming to this conference. He loves this conference, in part because together, with 4,000 libraries, Better World Books, Dustin, and all of you folks have saved over 330 million books from going in the landfill. That is quite an accomplishment. Good going, Dustin, and libraries. And in the middle, Laura Irmscher. Laura is the Chief of Collections at the Boston Public Library, and as such, she is responsible for 23 million items. 23 million items. She has to figure out where they are, and she's in the middle of creating a plan to store those. And on top of that, she's in the middle of a renovation. So you can imagine the headache that is Laura's life right now. So we have a technologist, a librarian, and a bookseller. Quite diverse. But I would suggest that there is one thing that ties all of you together. And that is that you want your patrons, your readers, your users to have the very best information possible. And online right now, I don't think that we're giving them that. Right? The best information sits in your libraries. And what they're finding when they click around on the web is not that. So let's dive in. Let's go back to today's announcement. Brewster, bring the folks up to speed who maybe didn't hear this. And I'm going to suggest that you use the microphone.
So what was... I think I can just be loud. Oh. Bup, bup, bup. So the idea is to try to, as Wendy said, I found the easiest way to talk about it is turning the Wikipedia footnotes into hypertext links. Make it so that people can, if they want more on a subject, to go and click through and go straight into our books. Can we make that happen? And the answer is yes, we can. But we want to go even further than that, but I find this a very describable way to go. So can we go and make a robot that goes and replaces the links and goes to the books? Yes, we can. Can we go and digitize these books and have them be available on the net just as in preview form in just a couple of pages for everybody to see? Yes, we can. Can we go and make it so you can click to go and borrow that digital book if it hasn't been checked out by other current readers? Yes, we've been doing that also for the last 8 years. Can we find all of these books that we want to make available and digitize them effectively? We can digitize them effectively. Great, we've got that going now. We can digitize now 1 million books a year. Can we actually find and get the books? And that was the big announcement this morning, is our working with Better World Books. And Better World Books is now owned 100% by a nonprofit called the Better World Libraries. Better World Libraries is now part of the nonprofit collection of organizations that the Internet Archive is now also part of. A number of funders, large part me, have funded these organizations to work closely together to transform the internet into the great library that kind of a lot of us dreamed of. And so with this announcement, we can work together to get to work with Better World Books. The real reason to go and do this announcement here is because now the missing piece is working with you guys. Where Better World Books gets their books is you guys. And so what we really need is, one, more folks to give their books to Better World Books. We also need more buyers of books to go to betterworldbooks.com, hopefully, or you can do it through Amazon and select it, but then they get 38%, which is, go to Better World Books yourself. So
Laura?
basically, if our collection of organizations can work together with libraries, we can make a life cycle of books that's much more healthy.
Thank you, Brewster. Laura, I want to ask you. You heard the announcement this morning that Better World Books and Internet Archive are uniting. Tell me, from a librarian's perspective, what's the impact of this new alliance?
Forgive me while I
just hold it.
All right. So from the librarian's perspective, as you mentioned in my introduction, I think a lot about space. So I'm spending a lot of my time doing space planning studies, thinking about how we can hold all of the materials in our collection. And the flip side of that is thinking about things that we no longer need to keep in our collection. I'm sure a lot of you are facing similar situations where you're thinking about what are the titles that are core to your users right now, what are some things that you collected in the past that you need to deaccession to make room for new things. And so this new announcement, this partnership, I see as a way to be more comfortable with our deaccession selections. So when we are thinking about materials that we no longer have space for, that might not be core to our collecting strategies, knowing that the information will still be accessible, that there is an avenue for our patrons to still access things, even if it's not in our building, is still a win for our users and a way for us to provide access to content.
Can everyone hear? Good. I think you're going to have to hold the microphone a little bit closer. Okay, that's perfect. So I'm going to ask our panelists just to put that mic very close. So, Laura, you're going through a renovation right now. And you also have to figure out where to put all those 23 million items. Talk to me a little bit about a project that we worked on together, the Jordan Collection.
So one of our special collections is the Alice Jordan Collection of Children's Literature. It has over 200,000 titles of children's books that were published over the last century. Sorry. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So the Jordan Collection has 200,000 children's books published over the last century. It's one of our special collections, and because of our renovation, it's unavailable to the public right now because we don't have a reading room to service our special collections. What we recently did is partner with the Internet Archive and match up the ISBNs of the titles in the collection with what they had already digitized, and found approximately 50,000 matches. And so we were able to make those, the Internet Archive made those available through open libraries, and now those books are accessible to the public when they, in a way that they can't come in and see the physical book, but we can still maintain access to a quarter of the collection. And it's also driving interest in the collection, letting people know that it exists and that there's more content, so then after our renovation, when our reading room opens again, we will have an avenue to let people access these things that they may have learned about for the first time.
So a quarter of the collection had already been digitized. It wasn't going to circulate. It's out of commission till 2021, and your patrons can now at least check these out and have access, discovery, interest in this collection. Dustin, tell us about the workflow. Now, you work with Boston Public Library. How does that work between the two of you?
We do, and we've worked with Laura and the Boston Public Library for maybe 5 or so years, somewhere in that ballpark. So the way it works, as you heard this morning, Better World Books processes over 30 million books in our 4 global distribution centers. We send a truck or a pickup service to the library that we work with. In this case, we send a straight truck to the Boston Public Library, their central branch. We make the pickup when they're ready for us to take pallets of books away. And those books are brought to our closest processing location. And in this case, they go to York, Pennsylvania. So that cuts down on our transportation costs and reduces our carbon footprint. So once the books are received at our facility there, we have a team that processes every single book that we touch. So those 30 million books, somebody in our organization touches that book at least once. And we're checking that book to see if it's able to be resold. If it's not able to be resold, we're donating it. And in the worst case scenario, we're recycling it. So with today's news, we're going to be able to take a lot more books and divert them from our recycling streams and donate them to the Internet Archive. So as these books come through our processing centers, we're checking them against 2 lists: Internet Archive's wish list and Internet Archive's never been seen list. So we're taking those books out of the stream, setting them off to the side, and as we accumulate a full truckload of materials, we are then forwarding those on to a designated location to be digitized and preserved forever.
Dustin, you told me that when this is your Mishawaka, Indiana site, amongst those 30 million books that flow through Better World Books every year, about 2/3 you're not able to sell or give away, and those go to recycle. And so the great opportunity is that there will be less than 2/3, right? That you're going to be able to match the Internet Archive wish list.
Correct. So our goal and our preference is to get books in the hands of readers, not recyclers.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this wish list. Brewster, what goes into this wish list?
We want any book we've never seen before, that we don't physically own, and we will commit to preserving that book forever. We will prioritize digitization of the ones that are on a wish list. And we've basically been redoing this wish list over and over again and refining it based on new input that we have. We're sort of at 1.5 million is one set, 4 million is another, and those get prioritized up. If people want to have input in this, please do. We're interested in trying to come up with the best list as possible. We came up with another category, which is the no ID list, or the no idea list. It's all of the books that don't have ISBNs, they may not even have an LCCN, and we're talking now, how do we go and effectively take that from Better World Books? So if you guys deaccession older books, that we'll still get those. And we'll get those, preserve them, and try to figure out exactly what they are, maybe match against WorldCat or beyond, and be able to get those digitized as well. So the idea is to make it so that your libraries don't have to feel like you're weeding anymore. Like the idea of thinking of books as weeds is, I think, kind of wrong. And think of it as reformatting. What you're doing is really going towards reformatting your collections so that they're still ongoing accessible.
So just to reiterate this point, if it's on the wish list, it might get digitized faster, but if Internet Archive has never seen it, has never digitized it, we will still put it in the queue to be digitized.
And we'll preserve it forever.
preserve the physical book.
Preserve the physical book, and when we digitize it, we work very hard to preserve the digital book as well.
So, Laura, I'm curious why Boston Public works with Better World Books. Is it to get, money when they resell your books, or is it for the higher social purpose that is also part of the return on investment?
So we take out thousands of books from our collection every year. Sorry, I'll get this. So every year we are actively weeding our collection, removing books from it, and we need a way to handle those collections. So we partner with Better World Books as a way to remove books from our collection, have them have a path for another use. Certainly, if there's a way to get some money off of that from our fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers, we want to do that. But more important than that is what happens to the book after it leaves the library. So we're very interested in Better World Books' partnerships with other organizations where they donate books, and now through this new partnership with Internet Archive, knowing that that the content is living on, that the book remains accessible, it makes it an easier decision for us to pass things on, and is actually a higher priority than the small monetary gain when you compare it to our total collection budget.
Brewster, the budget of Internet Archive is about $20 million a year. Wikipedia is about $100 million a year. But that's small compared to many, many libraries in the system. So what do you think a technology company can do with a relatively small amount of money?
Basically, we were finding that there's a huge amount of leverage, that it costs about $20 a book to take a book that's donated and turn it into a digital book and also preserve the physical book for the long term. That's about the cost of buying the book in the first place. Yet it can now be somewhat available to anybody in the world. Right? It can only be checked out one at a time, true, but it gives this whole nother life cycle. There's a huge amount of leverage that these technology organizations are working together with libraries. We can take the $12 billion a year that is the library budgets across the United States, and we can take just these small amounts of money, of Wikipedia or the Internet Archive or the like, and work together to go and have huge leverage towards your patrons, but also just the general public in general. So I think it's a bargain. We just have to do it more. We certainly know that there's lots and lots of readers. People are looking for information in this new and different way. So it's not not in vain. It's not just a tiny little project. It affects millions and millions of readers every day.
Dustin, what does it mean for you to be owned by a nonprofit? How do you think that changes your daily life and those of your 400 employees?
Well, having recently been owned by New York-based investors that would check in with us almost every single day, I can tell you life has gotten a lot easier. So thank you for that, Brewster. We're going to continue to work as hard as ever. We're always looking to make the process more efficient. It's a very labor-driven process. We have over 400 employees. As Brewster mentioned, Amazon takes 38 cents of every dollar of revenue that we sell on their platform. So it's an extremely low-margin business. We get paid $0 right now for recycling books. So there's no better time for us to do this than now. A year ago, recyclers were paying about $110 a ton for books that you could not sell. So the time to do this is now, and we're truly thankful to be owned by a mission-aligned owner. It's a wonderful feeling. We're still a certified B Corporation. Better World Books is still a for-profit company, but we're owned by a nonprofit, and we're thrilled with the new structure.
How many of you out there your library works with Better World Books? Quite a few. I'm sure I'm representing you when I say, what's going to change for the people who raise their hands?
Well, peace of mind. So we hope we've always been able to give you peace of mind by working with us. But now, instead of us recycling a lot of these books are going to be preserved and made accessible for generations to come. So that's just the start of things. We're going to be working on, we've done some integrations on our website. Right now, we've always been very, very pro-library, especially as an e-commerce player. You've always been able to go to betterworldbooks.com, and obviously you could buy a book, but we've also offered the opportunity to find it at your local library. Now, in addition to that, we are offering the ability to borrow the book if it's already in Internet Archive's collection. So that, I would say, is probably unheard of for an e-commerce company to do something like that. We're not afraid of making that. I guess, oh, Wendy's got it on the screen here. We're also at checkout. You can round up your purchase to benefit the Internet Archive so we can do more and digitize more books faster. So.
And there's some exciting things that we're excited that we can leverage together, but we have to figure out how to do it without sinking their business. They still have to stay cash flow positive, which is really not trivial, and you guys can help with that. But we would like them to basically take more different kinds of things, like serials. Or how about records, CDs, LPs, 78s, microfilm, and basically put it through the same flow, even though it's never going to be sold through their website. But how do we go and use basically how many libraries do you work with now?
Between 4,000 and 5,000. Closer to 5,000 if you include our libraries in the UK.
Working together, we can get a broader set of materials brought online.
And Wendy, let me add one thing. So this goes back to the difference between being owned by a for-profit investment group versus a nonprofit. Under the for-profit investment group, we're very concerned. You know, we have 4,000 to 5,000 libraries that ship books to us. We're always looking at profitability, and there are always certain margin targets that we're looking to hit. So in certain cases, we've had to reach out to libraries and tell them that they could no longer work with us because the arrangement wasn't profitable for the company. So in our new scenario, we have a lot more latitude. We still need to make sure that we break even, but we have a lot more latitude to extend our program and our free service to more libraries.
On the note of expanding beyond books, Laura, we have worked with the Boston Public Library. I'm going to go through my slides and talk about the sound archives. About 5 years ago, I think I visited you, and the folks at Boston Public took me down into the basement, and there were just a full floor of 78s, Edison rolls, LPs, but it had rained that day, and there was like 2 inches of water, puddled all over. So tell us the story. They were below the records. They were below the records. Tell us the story of the Boston Public Library sound archives.
Well, it's not a great idea to keep your sound archives in the basement, so don't do that. So we had a sound archive collection that was not in great condition. We also did not have a department that was dedicated to it, so it was kind of languishing in our basement. It was unavailable to the public. We didn't have any record players where people could actually listen to the music. We would be concerned about preservation for some of the materials if people were using it. So we were really stuck having this great collection, but knowing that it was inaccessible to the public. So through our conversations with Internet Archive, we decided to donate the collection to the Internet Archive, and they have been scanning it and making it available. So people can now listen to all of those amazing recordings. They're not languishing in our basement anymore. They are going to be preserved. The physical copy is going to be, and most importantly, people can actually hear the music.
In fact, here they are, all boxed up, thousands and thousands of 78s, and 32,000 of those 78 sides are now playable. In fact, I hear that you can say, Siri or Alexa, play me a 78 from the Boston Public Library.
You got to try this. It's Alexa, ask Internet Archive to play Hillbilly 78s, or Alexa, ask Internet Archive to play Tango 78s, and they'll just start playing. It's completely fun. Okay, it's a little creepy, but it's really fun.
So Brewster, 78s. We've got 32,735 of them from Boston. What if there were other 78s out there?
We want them all. We want basically anything we don't already have. And we're finding a lot of duplicates at this point. We're up to 155,000 sides. We're digitizing at about 8,000 a month. And we only have enough to last us through the end of January or maybe February. University of Illinois just donated theirs. Minot State University in North Dakota just donated theirs. But we're running into 60 or 70% duplication rate on the 78s. So we'd really like to try to find, and we can move them, we can pack them, we can pay for all of that. It's great. CDs, we're also doing the same kind of thing. We've digitized those, but we've only made 30 seconds available, and then we link to Spotify and YouTube. If we find that they're not on one of those, then I think we can start to make more available, like if they're out of print, but at least if they are in print, we direct people to how they can listen to it. And we're just kicking off, I don't know if you know this, LP digitization at scale. And so these guys were kind of demanding. They wanted to not only make sure that we were going to do it, they wanted to make sure we were going to do it now, and they wanted the digital versions back so that they could add those to their collections. All of which makes a lot of sense, and I think we've been delivering pretty well. So the long-playing records, we're finding pre-71 out of print, we can make more accessible, blah, 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 blah. So we're basically moving through these collections, and it was based on a donation that started with the Boston Public Library. Now other people are sort of adding in, and we'd love to work with all of you, not only for if you want to deaccession, but if you want to go and continue to own them, that's fine too. Or if you just want to surface these in your library collections, we have amazing quantities of materials that you'll never find on Spotify or the like. Same thing with the books. It's the missing century of books. These are books that aren't digitized. They're not anywhere that people are going to find them, but they're starting to become available because of this joint project and working with the libraries.
Yes, and just to reiterate, I think what you're saying, Brewster, is if I'm UC Santa Barbara or Florida State and I have 78s, we'll do an overlap study, and if you have it, we'll give you or surface a copy or create a collection of the 78.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dustin.
And this is a really good example of how Better World Books, currently we don't take 78s. But now that we know that Brewster wants 78s, if your account representative tells you that you can't send us 78s, tell him Brewster said you could.
What he said.
This sounds very good, almost, as Dustin said, too good to be true. There has to be challenges in this vision of bringing millions of books through libraries, deaccessioned, digitized, and made forever preserved and accessible. Dustin, from your point of view, what's the biggest challenge?
I think for us, we're talking about scaling up to handle millions of books. And we have to be able to put those millions of books somewhere beyond the recycling stream. Yesterday, it was easy. The recycling truck would pull up, we'd load it up with recycling, and it would go off and get converted to pulp. Now, we have, granted, our Mishawaka facility is 330,000 square feet. It's a lot of space, but we don't have a lot of extra space in any of our facilities to store these books. So we're in the process of working out the logistics and coming up with a plan to scale beyond the 1 million books a year that they're able to digitize right now.
Laura, tell me from your perspective, you want to participate in this program, but what are the challenges?
So if I'm using this program when I'm thinking about weeding decisions and what content we are keeping in the collection and what content we might be deaccessioning, expecting it to be digitized, my question is, and what I'd want to know more about is how that matches up with the wish list, how you're figuring out everything that I'm weeding is actually accessible to people, that it doesn't end up in a different stream.
Do you have an example of a book that perhaps you would love to see go into this program?
Well, Wendy, I have one right here.
Really?
So this was a bit of a coincidence, but this was pulled off my book truck in my office before we came here. So this is the 1990 Census Handbook for Florida. So we're the Boston Public Library, and statistics about Florida are not central to our core collecting strategies. In 1990, we thought it was really important that we had it. But now there's probably something about New England that could take that shelf space. So that's something that that has really useful data that my patrons might even want, but that isn't as core to what I'm collecting. So I would want to make sure that this content is available to my patrons and patrons around the world, but that I don't have to carry the burden of the shelf space for it in my building. And so I'm going to give it to Brewster to put under his coat.
Maybe Athena's patrons would use that. Perhaps genealogists would use the census records of 1990. Okay, Brewster, what's the biggest challenge that you have?
I'd like to correct the idea that we're only interested in the wish list. It's absolutely, completely not true. We want every book. Every book deserves to live and have a digital lifetime. So please, we're not just interested in the wish list. Often people come, oh, well, we'll just match against the wish list. No, no, no. We want every book. And we actually have funding now to digitize everything that we physically own, which is amazing. That hasn't always been the case. So now is the time to do it. I'd say the really key part for us, though, is matching books to readers. That we want to go and find a mechanism of getting these books, often that are a little bit old, that are not the current bestsellers, and finding how to repackage those for digital learners. That's our big challenge all in all. So we need to go and surface these every place people are looking for information, whether it's Wikipedia or coming in through your library catalog. Let's give them the choice of going and getting the physical book. I love physical books, but sometimes previewing the book or just borrowing the digital book, especially in the middle of the night, you can have access to these materials, and it's matching the materials to the readers. That's what's really motivating us, and I think that's a big challenge. We're going to have to work through our ILS vendors to actually get it so that we can surface these books in new and different ways. We're going to want to bring it up and bring up our librarians to know that these resources are out there. Maybe we use them in very different ways. So for computer science research purposes, what if we were to do automatic footnote checking, citation checking, to go and say, was that footnote really, did that actually say what it is that's asserted in that paper or Wikipedia or the like? We can start to do things like that if we have all of these things online. I think we can build towards that original vision of a global brain, a Memex, Xanadu, the World Wide Web of Tim Berners-Lee. I'd say all of those were really good ideas, and we are the ones that can build it. Those of us in this room, and those of us up here, but really, at this point, it's you guys. We need access to the books.
So we want to hear what you have to say. What would make this useful to you? What you want from a program like this? And I'm going to ask you to come on up, or perhaps Athena can come to you and let us know.
I'm not sure this mic is working, but it sounds like it might be. Okay, so let's start with this row here.
Please tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Susanna Smith. I'm at a college in Georgia. We have a state policy that we are not allowed to give books away that have been property stamped as state property. What advice do you have to respond to that so that we can actually start donating our deaccession books to you?
Thank you for that question. Brewster and I were just talking about this
Really?
right before the session started.
Let's talk about Georgia's policy.
So one of my long-term goals that I've always wanted to accomplish, Better World Books is actually a Georgia corporation. I went to the University of Georgia, yet the state institutions in Georgia cannot work with us because of some arcane legislation that was written back in the 1950s. So rest assured, this is one of my top 10 priorities to get resolved. And we thought we had it resolved until the university librarian at Georgia retired a few years ago. So we were close. I've got a new lead. I was telling Brewster about it. And it'll be a great day when we pull that over the finish line.
I don't know if it'll work for Georgia, but a lot of people have these sorts of issues, some sorts of issues along those lines. And because Better World Books is now owned by a nonprofit, Better World Libraries, I think you can donate the books to a nonprofit if you'd prefer. But, San Francisco Public Library has these same sorts of issues, and we're now getting books from them. So trying to figure out how we can use these organizations as well as educating. I think if we just didn't think of these deaccessioned books as weeded or helping private enterprise, I think that will allay some of the worries that were embedded in some of these rules. And I think in most things like that, is let's go forward and make sure the right thing happens, and then catch up a little bit later if there's ever any problems.
Yep, I'm Dave Tickerson from Cal State Fresno. We've sent you some of our books.
Thank you.
But when you say you want all the books, that reminds me of something I heard a decade ago from Google saying, we want all the books. Yet I can't get to all their books, and I know why. How is your project different than the Google Book Project?
I really like the Google Book Project, and if they turned just 5 degrees to the left, we would have had one project. But they went really wacko wrong. They basically tied things up. Even the public domain is tied up in this sort of you can't get at. Even if it's in Hati Trust, you can't get at the public domain, especially not in bulk. Then there's the in copyright, the modern materials. And they've tied that up as well. So we've done this digitize and lend, controlled digital lending, and it's working. There aren't lawsuits around this. We're all, and so it's all been working. We've been doing this now with the Boston Public Library since 2011, and we haven't been shy about telling people about it. And not only that, we'll give you back the digital books. And you know what? We won't put any restrictions on it. And so the idea that you're law-abiding citizens, we're law-abiding citizens, here's the digital books, you can do as much as you can. We're not going to have a whole fleet of lawyers. We went and read those Google Books agreements. It was a nightmare. That was just sort of lawyers on renegade. I mean, it was nuts. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are participating in those say, oh yeah, it's all open. It's like, no, it really is not. So this idea, this is another run at it. We're having to digitize the same darn books again, which is stupid. But we can't get Google to budge. We can't get Hati Trust to budge. Nothing's happening out there. And we can't wait anymore. We have to move along. So let's do it again, unfortunately, and let's do it right this time. And if it's not right enough for you, tell us and let's fix it. This is hard. This is taking hundreds and hundreds of people. It's taking tens of millions of dollars that could be spent differently. But we have to do it again because people didn't actually get what they were looking for out of the Google Books project.
I want to encourage everyone to attend Michelle Wu's presentation. She is, in many ways, the primary author of the concept of controlled digital lending. She's speaking here. She's the law librarian at Georgetown, but also a lawyer, a librarian, and a legal scholar. Other questions?
I'm coming over with the mic.
I love seeing so many hands. Yes.
I want to respond to something you asked when we first got here, which was how would you use this, and want to go back to the Wikipedia entries turning blue. I was extremely excited, and I was also saying yes when you gave your talk earlier, Brewster, that the students want it. They want to click on that link. So I'm speaking, and not only from a librarian's perspective, but as a co-director of an open educational resource, which is really geared towards making content and resources available to people that are not in textbooks readily available to them. And one of the big challenges we have is that we give people the bibliography. The really great sources are all primary sources and some secondary sources. And it's very difficult for those individuals, all these people, we want to use them, to be able to click on that and go on. So I want to say, from an educator standpoint, it's really, really important that the books that you're putting into Internet Archive correspond with the things that we want in lesson plans, the things we want in resources.
Send us the list.
So it is, okay. We'll send you, I'll
us
send
the list.
it to
We'll
you.
send it to him. Send it to me, brewster@archive.org. And Chris Freeland, he's our collection master.
In the back.
Who's in the back. Stand up, wave. Chris Freeland, send it to him as well. We want to know, we need signals for what are the best things. And OER and open access is the gold standard. This kind of digitize and lend is kind of lame, but it's as far as we thought we could go. And so far, so good. We haven't had problems, but OER is really the way to go.
So on that end, I would say other collaborations would be with open educational resource repositories and other places that are developing those types of texts or those types of lesson plans. I don't know if you're already working with them.
We
Yes.
have a program called the Universal School Library, led by Lisa Petrides, who's an open educational resource expert with ISKME. And I'd love to put the two of you together.
I'm Bob Holly. I'm a retired library science professor, formerly librarian, who has spent his life studying fringe topics. And I'm curious whether you're also very much interested in popular culture materials, all those genre fiction books.
Yes. We follow people's passions. Become part of us. Go and say these are the important things, and then make sure they're used. Go.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Second, self-published books.
Yep.
And finally, what about books that many people would consider sexually offensive?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you. Derek Wilmot, Clemson University. I wanted to ask a question. Again, this is more on the Wikipedia side with turning it blue. I'm not sure if it can hear me. The question is, I know you said earlier today that it was going to be for the English English language side of Wikipedia, but there are so many other languages out there in Wikipedia. Are you going to be eventually doing those other languages as well?
It depends. We're going language by language to get them to approve the robot. So and it's basically each community makes their own decisions. The one that fixes broken links is now, I think, in 20 some odd languages, but we want all 190 of them. And we're still going through all of those communities and their own particular decision-making process. I think we're up to 6 or 7 languages now for the book robot: English, Hebrew, Arabic, Greek, Bosnian. And we're just moving through them. And we have a surprisingly large number of those books. And when we don't have those books, we go and try to find those books.
So I'm riffing on your idea of all the stuff. So if I imagine a future in which you could actually digitize all the stuff, I think that lays out a lot of really interesting possibilities. I mean, I've always been of the opinion that in a sense, copyright law is the only thing that stood in the way of having access to all the stuff. And so I understand that you're going with a model, and I agree it's extraordinarily lame to have to rescan millions of items that have already been scanned by Google and the Hathi Trust Project. But once again, all of that stuff is still there. So I'm not saying the copyright law goes away, but I still think that we are not far away, and you're right. From a grand scheme of things, even the cost of scanning all the stuff is, compared to like an aircraft carrier, really not all that much. So if we think that it's possible, that's the big idea. I'm curious as to what you think the ramifications are for even us as libraries, because part of it is deaccessioning. But the Trent example you had this morning was interesting, and there are libraries that are closing down. There's a university that just announced shutting down within my area today. Not today, I mean last week. So there are strangely weird opportunities to get a hold of collections that the ownership piece of it isn't there. But if one ARL library decided to get really crazy and say, fine, have our whole collection, what then? I just think that all of these are actually possibilities. And I appreciate you're saying, I'll take it. And I actually am very, I feel of all of the groups in the digital sphere for having the right mindset with this, the Internet Archive is the one that I actually feel very strongly in the right way of this. Hopefully it survives you after you're not part of it.
Me too.
But as I said, this is an unformed question, but I just keep thinking, what does it look like if we actually do all
Let me
the
define
stuff?
what it shouldn't look like. Let's say you go and give all your stuff to the Internet Archive, we become a monopoly, and we sell it back to you. And we'll just keep raising the prices. And let's put on some random arbitrary restrictions on it. That's not what the world should look like. But that's what we as libraries have built up over and over again. They're for-profit companies, sometimes they're non-profit companies, and it's dreadful. What we really want is libraries to have lots of different points of view. Let's have the fringe guys that would have things that wouldn't work in some other jurisdiction. Let's go and have different points of view. Let's have different services come out of our organizations in new and different ways. Let's live a little bit open life. Let's try some things out. We are always worrying about what we call policy issues, which are copyright law, privacy, these sorts of things. It means that we're not completely effusive because we worry about some of these things, but we're trying. And the idea is let's have libraries that are diverse, they reflect the communities that they're built from. Let's go and have them leverage common resources that are digitized, as well as born digital materials in new and different ways. And let's not be locked into just one organization, say the Internet Archive or the Hathi Trust, for the long term. It doesn't make any sense to do that. I think we can go and build a healthy library system that's got a lot of digital materials without just making ourselves be customer service representatives for other people's databases.
So I'll ask
Is that a little bit of a
question.
rant? Sorry.
Athena, tell me how much time, what is our end time?
I think we end at 5:25. It's 5:13.
Okay,
And
maybe
so-
5 more minutes of questions.
I'll go ahead and ask a question and then to you. So because people will be sending you collections that have a lot of duplicate titles, you'll probably get duplicate titles. And how are you handling that? Because right now you're complying with copyright, which means you can lend one copy at a time. Are you creating multiple digital copies? And if so, I assume you're not actually redigitizing. So what's the process around duplication and different versions?
If it's different versions, if it's really similar ones, then we try to not do it on our own nickel. But if anybody else wants to pay us to do the others at 12 cents a page, we'll digitize anything. We right now only lend one copy out. And the way we're trying to handle so the breadth, we're trying to have one copy of all of these and keep a physical copy of them. But we also need depth. We need more than one copy. One copy is not the right number. So we're working with libraries as part of the Open Libraries program, like the Jordan collection, where we get the list of ISBNs, we match them, and then we don't have one, we have two. And we've, I don't know, have 20 libraries, something like that have done this. And we have maybe 500,000 books now that from those libraries matched up so that we have a broader depth. It might be that we go and get more copies from Better World Books to be able to make that depth. But frankly, we would much prefer to work with libraries. And it's easy. If you go to Open Libraries on internetarchive.org/details open libraries, there's a form you can fill out. It's really simple. It's really easy. And then we will go and use your ISBN list and add you to the collections to get some more depth. So we might go and own more than one copy, but that would be, I think we can do better than that. I think we can use our libraries, the library systems. A whole library systems could go and sign up and go and start to lend against their physical collections. And again, Chris Freeland is the person to talk about this. So there's ways of participating that isn't just deaccessioning to Better World Books. It's just go and sign up and participate. Also, all of these books, plus even more, are available to the blind and dyslexic. It is an enormous collection. It's a couple million books for free of these blind and dyslexic. Really, it's best for the dyslexic because it's not got all of the affordances that the blind really need. But again, that's absolutely free. And again, Chris Freeland, you can sign up and you can then give blessings to any number of your patrons to go and say that they are blind and dyslexic enough to have instantaneous access to millions of books for free. There's no fee, no nothing.
So just to reiterate, archive.org/open libraries, and then that'll put you in touch with Chris Freeland. You can fill out the form.
Athena, one more thing to add to what Brewster was saying there. So the last few weeks, Brewster's challenged us with figuring out how do we get one of everything. At 1:11 p.m. today, he asked Chris and I to figure out the duplicate issue. So we're working on it.
Wait a minute, it's almost 5 o'clock. You haven't figured that out yet? Come on.
Hi there. Kimberly Shoddock from Illinois Institute of Technology, and I'm excited that Better World Books will be taking our stuff again, hopefully, because we are one that they said, no more, please. So thank you. I'm very excited about all of this news today. And continuing some conversations from this morning, I was really appreciative of the person who brought up the perspective of Wikipedia entries being mostly white male. And some ideas have occurred to me as we've been talking and listening of a potential partnership to kind of change that, and maybe in your priority wish list, you could work with librarians who facilitate Wikipedia edit-a-thons for people of color. I do one for women in STEM at IIT. And maybe there's a way that there could be some outreach to those librarians and say, hey, first of all, you can use our digitized collections and use those as link to those. But then also, if you're using things within your library that aren't available, maybe send those out and we can digitize those and work together that way. So just an idea.
Great idea. We're working with a group called Whose Knowledge, which brings marginalized communities and voices into Wikipedia. And they are giving us, for instance, lists of Native American books that they want woven in. Exactly what we'd love to be doing with you. Last question.
So following up with something you just said, Brewster, you were talking about list of ISBNs. So when my library opened in 1970, we bought a used collection from an older library. Books from the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, that fall right in that big gap that you were talking about this morning. A lot of them don't have ISBNs.
Have you cataloged them? Okay, so there's a real problem out there, which is what to do about those books in the middle. And one plea is, as you're going and giving books to Better World Books, don't take the records out of your catalog, because a lot of your books might have been cataloged and they have a local library number in them that would allow us to use Z39.50 to go back up and get the MARC records and be able to know what it is. So I know that's not going to necessarily cover everything that you're talking about, but please, it's so hard to recatalog some of these books. It's hard to, it's expensive, it's faulty, it's difficult. So if you can keep the MARC records, please do so. We're also now talking about, but we haven't figured out how, to do sort of recognition of maybe the title pages and the like, and to be able to go and match title pages. Because often these are cloth-bound books, so you can't use cover images. Or we might be able to OCR some of the lines in the middle of the book and be able to use full-text search against our own collection to find out, do we have it already? Or Google's books to figure out what it is this book is. So we're trying to figure out what to do. So absolutely, this is critical for us because we want to fill in the missing century of books. And an awful lot of those are before ISBN and even don't have LCCNs printed in them. If they have OCLC numbers, glorious. If they've got MARC records in your own catalogs, glorious. Otherwise, we'll just suffer along and we'll have to figure it out. But it's sped up a whole lot if you have any indicators of what these things are.
So I have a final question for all three of you. And we'll be around afterwards if you'd like to ask your questions in person. So let's just imagine that we're 4 years hence, and we've done 4 million more books, impactful, powerful books from folks in this audience and libraries around the world. They're online with one click in millions of Wikipedia references in many languages. What do you hope will be the big impact from libraries, booksellers, and the Internet Archive working together. Laura, let's start with you.
So my hope and goal is that we are meeting our users and researchers wherever they want to be doing their work, so that if there's 4 million more books available with links and accessible to them, they're getting them on their time frame where they want to. They're not dependent on coming into the libraries. We're still available to them and happy to see them, but they have other avenues. They can do their research wherever and whenever they want, and they have so much more accessible to them.
Thank you. Dustin?
Thanks, Laura. So for me, books transcend boundaries, and anywhere you go in the world where you have an internet connection, you should have access to the books that you no longer want or that are no longer needed at your specific library location. So for me, it's about access to books.
Brewster, what's your vision of impact?
I'd really like a healthy ecosystem around books and literature. I like games with many winners. So many authors, many publishers that are actually healthy, many booksellers, many libraries, and everyone a reader. And I want no constrictions in any of these places, no monopolies at all. That way we can go and reflect new ideas and not having arbitrary choke points through this system. The library system is absolutely critical as part of that, but the bookseller system, the digital era organizations are critical. We need publishers to be healthy. Right now they're getting crushed out of existence by a large bookseller that starts with A. Can we go and make it so that we end up with a healthy ecosystem? And we know what our roles are going forward. That's what I'm hoping out of this whole transition.
Well, let's all meet here in 4 years and see if we can get this done. Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you for being here in the audience. We'll be around. My cards are right here if you'd like to stay in touch with the Internet Archive. Thank you.